This episode of the Citadel Cafe is brought to you by listeners like you. Visit patreon.com/the Citadel Cafe to find out how you can become a patron and help make this show possible. This is the Citadel Cafe, episode number 340 for Wednesday, November 27th, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and the Citadel Cafe is where my friends and I hang out to talk about the geeky stuff we are into for the past 8 years. I missed the anniversary last week, so it was November 17th. Yeah, I think it was just before or just after I recorded with Brockett. But the oh no you're hearing in the background is Megan Townsend, who's back this week. You can find her at Megan Townsend on all the social media that matters. Hello. Welcome to the anniversary
Hi.
show.
Hi. Oh my God, I
Surprise.
didn't even know.
Well, 8 years is kind
Well,
of a weird number. I mean, usually 10, 5, that sort of thing.
yeah. But I mean, still though, 8 years is amazing.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's been the key is just consistency, and I know that there was at least one summer where I didn't really get much done, but I now work in breaks on purpose. Like we take 2 weeks off at Christmas. I take a couple weeks off in the summer sometimes when I'm on vacation, that sort of thing. And I find that that helps being able to keep the show consistent. I've actually been podcasting for a lot longer than 10 years. I've done a number of different shows, some of which were very early on, pre the Citadel Cafe. And so I think I've been podcasting for roughly 10 years, if I was to do the
Wow. That's amazing.
math. Thanks.
Like, no, that's yeah, I think you just had the same sort of minute when you asked me how long I was cosplaying for, and I was just like, I think it's been 10 years. What? Yeah. That's incredible though. I mean, like, I how long have I been doing it for now? Because I started doing it with you. It's been like a year.
It's been over a year. I'm trying to remember exactly when, because you popped on a couple of times, but then it wasn't right away that you were like monthly. It was,
Yeah.
uh, I think. Well, I want to say probably about a year and a change. Like I want to say maybe
Mhm.
14 months, because Brockett's little one is around there. I don't remember how old Emerson is, but she's just over a year, and he would have been starting to get very busy and
Wow.
not able to be on the show around the time she was born. And so that's
Right.
probably also around the time where I was trying to ramp up some of the other people and seeing how often people could come on, and go from there. So I would guess a little bit over a year.
Wow.
You were certainly
Time
doing it.
flies.
You were certainly doing it last year with me when we talked about HalCon, and
Yeah,
so that's
yeah,
so it's been at least a year because that just rolled by last month, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
th-
Wow.
this week, in the past week, I have lost. I said I lost. I've enjoyed some of my low key evenings in No Man's Sky, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I've now gotten kind of like I'm no longer learning how to play in terms of like the functionality of like getting around and stuff. And now that I have a handle on it, it's become more organized, so I can log in and decide like what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go. Have you watched any No Man's Sky or have you played it yourself? I'm curious.
Um, I haven't played it myself personally. I know that my boyfriend Colin has played it, and I think I've watched him play a little bit. Um, but I'm kind of more adjacent to it than anything else. I'm familiar
Right.
with it. I understand the concept of it. I know it's meant to be like an auto-generated, like every planet is meant to be
Yeah.
like auto-generated, like from an algorithm or something, which is pretty amazing from like a computing standpoint. That's a feat and a half. But yeah, I haven't played extensive amounts of it. I hadn't seen extensive amounts of it, but what I have seen looks beautiful.
Oh, it's a pretty game. It's a
Very
very pretty game.
nice.
Now, I mean, granted, I have a brand new computer and I've dialed
Oh,
things.
that's right. I forgot you had that.
Yeah, I've dialed things back a little bit. Like I had everything on high and I was getting some frame drops and I was getting some weird sort of like anti-aliasing issues. And I think I've nixed it. It's the kind of thing where I would notice it, but then I'd be streaming. I was like, well, I don't want to spend 20 minutes messing around with graphic settings live on stream. Like I'll do this some other time when I'm not live. And I would just never get around to it. And so it was basically things like trees in the distance would have this weird kind of little shimmer to them, and I didn't think they should.
Mm.
And so after talking with our mutual friend John, who built the computer, um, I he suggested, like, sometimes he'll watch these videos where someone will say, like, well, no, like, you don't, you can, just because you can run this game at, you know ultra high, doesn't mean, one, you should, or two, you can tell the difference. He's like, some things are just not that good yet, technologically speaking, and unless you have the latest greatest RTX card, shadows are not going to look spectacular. So why waste computing power on shadows when you could just reduce the shadows a little bit, probably not notice the difference, but then up your render distance in a game if it has that option, which means you can
Yeah.
basically see clearer and farther. And so I messed around with a few things. I put more oomph into the anti-aliasing and a couple of other things, and the game starts to look a lot better. Now, I haven't been back to a really popular place yet, and that's what I was having issue with. So I was flying into a trading post, and there's a lot of spaceships and a lot of NPCs walking around. The game sort of got a little bit choppy frame wise, and that doesn't normally bother me too much. But in this particular game, because everything else is so smooth, it does kind of take you out of it for a bit. You're like, oh, darn it! Now I feel like I'm playing a video game as opposed to flying around in space. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit tricky. But I'm starting to get a little bit. I'm starting to understand the pace of the game and kind of what they're trying to get you to do. I think the problem with this procedurally generated universe is that it's so enticing and the exploration is so fun that you just want to start to do it, but you kind of have to be patient through this early tutorial set of missions so that you can not just kind of like learn how to play, but also unlock all of the different things that you want to be able to do. Like early on, it makes you build a base, and it's not
Mm.
clear that you can dismantle the base, right?
Oh.
Right. So, and you can rip things down and get some of your materials back or all of your materials back, depending on what it is. And it's not permanent. You can pick up the base computer and move it, or you could always build another one. You could have multiple bases. You don't have to have just one. But they don't tell you that. I lost patience with that, and I asked the chat rooms, like, okay, look, this, I can't seem to get past this. It really wants me to build this base as part of the mission. If I do this on this planet that I don't necessarily want to live on, can I move later? And the chat was like, yes, you can. I was like, okay, cool, thank you. And so, stuff like that is missing from the tutorial.
Mm.
But the other thing is that they tend to spoon feed you some things and then gate others behind chance discoveries. And it's not that either are bad, it's that the inconsistency is confusing. So,
Yeah.
for example, your first couple minutes, and this is not a spoiler. It's really the first minute of the game is like you're on a planet. Chances are it's pretty hostile, and you have to take off and leave. And your launch thrusters on your shuttle are not working. You have to collect these two things to create launch fuel and then blast off. And it's pretty simple. There's two ingredients. Then you make launch fuel, and then you repair the thing and you take off. And so you do that, and it's pretty straightforward. But then later on, as you go and you start to get into these upgrades, there's a thing called the anomaly, which is new in Beyond, which is the latest version of No Man's Sky. And it is essentially the multiplayer hub. So when you go there, it's akin to being in like Stormwind City in World of Warcraft, right? It's a hub where you can see other players, you can see other players' ships. It is
Mm.
ridiculously cool. Like stuff flies by and you're just like, I want one of those. I really want one of those.
I want that.
I'm flying what essentially looks like a Volkswagen Jetta with wings. It is not aerodynamic. It does not. It feels okay. It feels spacey in the cockpit, but when you're looking at it from the outside, you're like, this really doesn't jive.
Mm.
But I was up there in this anomaly, and some things were coming in and landing, and I kid you not, one thing looked like a bubble with an ornate, like, elvish fin, and that was the whole ship. And it just looked like it was like faster than snot. Like it looked like it was just meant for one thing, which was just like speed, right? And
Amazing.
like there was no visible guns, there was nothing, there was no wires, no
Is it all
pipes.
like you can design your own ship? Is that kinda how it works?
Unfortunately, no, but I would not be surprised if that's something that they're trying to work on. No,
Mm.
you have to buy ships. You can trade in the ship that you have and buy another one from an NPC. I think part of it is just the RNG of hanging out at trading posts, And
Right.
if an NPC comes in with a ship that you like that's within your price range, you can trade in the current one and buy the new one. Eventually, and I only know this because I've watched other people like Tadriel play. And you can get to a point where you can actually buy a freighter, and a freighter allows you to store multiple ships so that you can have like your big hauler that hauls a lot of equipment, or you can have a small fighter that you could use for ship to ship combat, that sort of thing. I
Hmm.
haven't reached that point yet. I just want something that has more inventory slots and looks a little bit cooler. Um, I hope you can. I don't know if it's possible, but I hope you can eventually change the color of your ship. Even if you can't change the design, it would be nice to say, like, well, it's cool, but I don't like the fact that it's orange. I'd much prefer it to be blue or something like
Like
that.
slap a coat of paint on it or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Because
Right.
you can do that with the base. The base, it's all the base pieces are all prefab. It's like, metal wall with window, metal wall with door, like, and it's all kind of like it looks the same. But
Hmm.
there's a highlight color. And so similar to like having a racing stripe down a car, it's a metal wall, but you can choose the color of the stripe to be blue, red, orange, green, whatever. And so, they have a couple of palettes that you can kind of mess with. So,
Hmm.
I'm hoping later on that I might discover that. But the issue with the progression is that the uh, what's the anomaly shows up quite early, which is great because it unlocks a bunch of things and kind of shows you what's possible in the game. But then your wheels start to turn and you think, okay, well, all of this stuff is great, but it's expensive. So I should probably get an economy going as soon as possible so that I'm not playing this game for 30 hours and then realizing I have no money and I can't do the things that I want.
Hmm.
And I like exploring the economy in games. And part of the things that you can do is upgrade your scanners and things like that to help you discover more minerals and things. So I started to do that, and I found the tech tree, and I started to scroll see what I wanted. I got the thing, found out how to build it, but it asked for parts that I'd never seen in the game before. And when you add it to your mission log, it says craft or buy this, this, and this, and then you can make the scanner. I was like, okay, well, that's straightforward. I know how to craft. I know some of these things you can look it up. Like if it's condensed carbon, well, that's made from carbon, so you go collect carbon and then you do your things and etc. But a couple of things it asked for I'd never seen before, and there are some things that you cannot craft and you have to buy things like say like a microchip or something. At least at this stage of the game. But then the fact that it said that you could craft or buy this other stuff, I was like, well, it's a sodium diode. I collect sodium all the time. I must be able to craft it, but I don't have the capability. It doesn't show up in my crafting menu. And so it was confusing because all of the hand holding that I had thus far seemed to lead me to this point, but then it was gating me from these other technologies and not explaining to me how to get there. And
Hmm.
I would much prefer it to be like, hey, here's a sodium diode. You need X, Y, and Z to make a sodium diode. I'm fine with that. It's like it's very similar to Minecraft in that you want to make prismarine stairs. Well, first you need to be able to mine, or not mine, but you need to be able to kill guardians to collect prismarine to make the stairs, to make the blocks to make the stairs. There's like a backwards chain you have to go through. And so with No Man's Sky, I was expecting that backwards chain, and there just isn't one. And I discovered how to make the sodium diode, but I only found it because I was trading in navigational data, which I got a map from, and the map led me to a manufacturing facility that used to be an alien place. And then I unlocked the console there, and when the console was unlocked, it said, oh, hey, here's a new tech tree. And it looks familiar. It looks just like all the other tech trees, except for it's a blueprint tech tree. I was like, oh, sweet. Okay. But the problem is that I've had this map in my inventory for 2 play sessions, and I just never did it because I was too busy doing the missions, right?
Right.
So to me, advancing and unlocking these things should be part of those tutorial missions, but they're not. It was
Ah,
it was it
yes.
was hooked to a random map that I got traded when I first traded some like navigational data, I think is what it's called. And so it's just like, well, this is a key piece of information that was making me very frustrated in my playthrough. Now, if the whole game was like this, if you were handed nothing, then I'd be just like, okay, well, I need to advance. I don't know what to do next. I have these maps in my inventory. I'll do those. And so
Mhm.
I would have found the manufacturing facility right away and then realized, oh, okay, here's my blueprint tech tree. So when the game says, "Hey, you need to craft this sodium diode," I can be like, "I've seen that before. Where did I see that before?" And then you go and you find it. But unfortunately, you get, um, we'll say, led astray by the tutorial being so monotonous, and so you cannot progress until we give you this mission node, that it's frustrating because you expect that hand holding, but then it just doesn't do it for some parts of what I feel should be the tutorial. Now, all of this is minor stuff compared to the experience of playing the game. I'm still having a blast. It is still very entertaining the umpteenth time that I've flown the starship from the surface of a planet to orbit seamlessly with no loading screen. You clouds part, you exit the atmosphere, and you're in space. It is still a extraordinarily relaxing and fulfilling game to play. And I think the problem that I'm running into as, we'll say, an inexperienced gamer, in that I don't play a lot of different video games. I tend to spend a fair amount of time playing games, but it's just Minecraft and No Man's Sky right now.
Mhm.
And the the fact that No Man's Sky feels like a major game, and yet it's an indie game. Like, it's a small. I don't know if they can call themselves an indie developer anymore, but like it's a small team that made this game, and so the the hiccups that you're seeing are the fact that it's a small team trying to do their
Exactly.
best, right? It's
Yeah.
not a AAA title that's been, it's not like the fourth Assassin's Creed where like the story's been ironed out. They've done this before, like, that kind of a thing. So it's got
Mhm.
some bumps, but the bumps are forgivable, I think, once you sort of get in there and you realize, okay, when you're stuck, you kind of have to exhaust all of your resources and kind of like play that patient game. Was like, okay, well, I didn't get handed it, so now I have to dig for it. Now that I know that, I think I'll have even more fun. Uh, but it's one of those things where at the moment I'm still like, well, I think I know what I'm doing, but there's a lot of stuff I know I want to do, like establish a full base with maybe some mining and stuff like that. But one, I don't know if I want to do it on the planet that I'm on. And two, I don't know if I should bother to do that because there might be some of these core missions that require me to do that to progress. And if I do it now, what I know about the game, it will ask me to do it again to progress. Like,
Mhm.
just because I'm not at that mission stage, it won't say, "Oh, you've done that already. Awesome." It'll say like, "You need to build a wall." And you're like, "I've built 70 walls. Why do I have to build another one?" And that's the disconnection with the main missions and the exploratory gameplay. Like, the sandbox and the tutorials don't overlap. Or sorry, they
Right.
overlap and it doesn't work. If they're going to do a
Right.
tutorial like that, that's that handholdy, it should gate you. Like, you should have to go through the first tutorial missions before you're let loose on the sandbox, after which you can just do whatever you want. But
Mhm.
the temptation and the freedom of doing whatever you want and just deciding, I don't know what I'm going to do right now. That planet looks cool. Let's go find out what that is. Like, that to me is really, really fun, but it's a distraction and a potential leapfrog that you don't anticipate. If you go and discover something there and get caught up in doing something, you could be doing all that, not realizing that you're going to have to do it all again for a mission,
Right.
right? So then you can kind of exhaust uh, the shininess of new things. Like, I would much rather a mission say like, "Oh, you have to activate your hyperdrive and travel to a different star system." Sweet. Okay, let's do that. That should be fun. If I had to do that as like for the second time for the mission, it wouldn't be as fun. Like, it wouldn't be as, like, and we'll say exciting, because there wouldn't be, it would just feel like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Let's just do that. Like, it'd feel a little bit old hat. It wouldn't feel as new, I guess.
Mhm.
But any video games on your horizon? Any, I know that you often play like story games, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Nothing nothing yet. Alistair keeps asking when I'm gonna be on the Citadel again, and hopefully soon. I might actually, the last couple weeks that I've been aside from working an exorbitant amount, um, I've been trying to figure out OBS.
Okay.
Um, so just trying to learn OBS and how to learn the the software and and everything. So I think my first stream might be the return to the Citadel because I haven't been on it in a minute. So I don't know what looks different. I don't know what it all is. So I might just go and explore everything when I first, my first stream is like coming back to take a look at everything that's going
Well, that's a good idea
on the
because
server.
then you're not under the pressure to build anything if you haven't been playing Minecraft in a while. You can just kind of like walk around and the content is already there. You just have to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
discover things. That's cool.
yeah.
That'd be fun to have you
Um,
back. I'm excited about that.
yeah. And now like I also got a new computer, so
Hmm,
hopefully I'll be able to I have a webcam that I'm currently borrowing from a friend and a 1080p monitor. Eventually I'm going to be getting my own stuff, but I don't know if I'm keeping this computer, if I'm trial running it for a time being, but my
hmm,
friend hasn't asked for it back. So
cool.
we'll see how it goes. I think I just bought my mic, I'm sorry. Um
So, out of
but
curiosity, are you streaming from a PC?
I think it will depend on what I end up streaming. Yeah, I think it will depend. I think I most likely will end up streaming Minecraft from the PC.
Because
Because
if you own Java Minecraft, you can download it to the PC. You don't have to buy it again. You
yes,
can,
yeah,
yeah.
no, I knew that.
So if
Um,
that's the case, I will suggest that you check out Streamlabs OBS on the PC. It is 100% easier to use than the OBS that I've been trying to deal with on a Mac.
okay.
I haven't tried OBS Studio on a PC yet. I know a couple people prefer that over Streamlabs, but the reason why I suggest Streamlabs is because as a beginning streamer, as someone that hasn't done it a lot, it just seemed to put everything in a very clear order. And
Hmm.
there are some back settings I mean, that's always tricky, but there's enough, I can help you out with that sort of thing. But the interface of just like having a be right back screen and a start screen and capturing your mic and capturing the game and all that kind of stuff is just so simple compared to what I'm used
Hmm.
to. And I had No Man's Sky set up to stream like in 30 minutes. Like it was
Oh,
pretty
amazing.
straightforward. Yeah.
Like
Uh,
I did go through a little bit ago and I did customize my Twitch channel a little bit more. So I
nice.
have like an offline screen currently and I have my about section sorted out and um I have done some stuff and currently you can find me on twitch.tv/Omegan Townsend. Um but yeah, I have most things sorted out. The only thing I have not yet done is stream. So that's hopefully coming soon. Just with work right now, I'm not sure when that'll happen because
Oh, right.
I don't know if anyone knows, but I work in retail and retail over the holidays is a very volatile time.
Yep.
So I'm not 100% sure on, you know, how things will work just yet. But definitely in the new year for sure. I'm going to set a day, either a day or two, for streaming specifically.
Cool.
So
Could it be something fun to
yeah.
do over the Christmas holiday too? It's just chill.
Yeah,
Nothing, no pressure.
if I get a chance to do it, absolutely 100%. I'm just worried that a lot of my free time will be spent um getting ready for Christmas because I feel like
Yeah.
this year's going to be a busy year and
Hmm.
finding time to shop and wrap gifts and decorate and all that stuff. But I've been working on some more YouTube videos and we'll probably vlog the getting ready for Christmas thing and to kind of get myself into the habit of doing videos every day. There's a thing on YouTube called Vlogmas, where people will just do little short vlogs every single day that are Christmas themed throughout the month of December. Um, for like the from December 1st leading up. So I'm gonna see if I can try and do that on. I mean, I won't do the full month, obviously, because there's some days I won't be able to film because I'll be at work and I'm not allowed to film at work. Um, But, that's a thought just to kinda get me back into the groove and the routine of doing stuff, so,
Nice.
yeah.
Very cool. Well, we can move on to what we have been watching. I know that you
Mhm.
are ahead of me on this. I have watched the first two episodes, but you, I think, spent a fair amount of time over the last few days in something new.
I finished it. I finished the whole thing, I know everything that happens. I've been watching The Dragon Prince, season 3. Um, yeah, I finished it when did I finish it? I finished it, like, was it yesterday? I think it was no. Yes, I think it was yesterday, or Monday. Um, and I was actually really surprised with this season. I feel like I don't know what it is. I feel like I've been really lukewarm about a lot of stuff lately, and I'm not sure why. Um, and there's still some things I'm lukewarm about with this series, and I won't. Like, how far did you get into Dragon Prince, if at all?
So, well, and we'll keep this spoiler free because it only just came out
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah,
But I've watched the first two episodes. I watched one last night over dinner, and then I
okay.
watched one this morning. I would have had time to watch another one this morning, and I was starting to feel like I was getting into the story and maybe, curious about
Mhm.
where things are going to go. But only for certain characters. The issue that I had is that I took the time to fast forward ahead just to look at the episode numbers to see how many there were, and there's only like nine or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So I
not
was
long.
so I was like, "Ooh, okay, these are only a half an hour. There's only nine. I'm gonna keep myself to one a day because, as I mentioned last week on the podcast, that I really enjoy when I find something I like on Netflix or a streaming service, and I can just play one a day and not have to just hunt for something new.
Mhm.
Because I very often struggle with like, well, what am I in the mood for? And that initial kick takes me a bit to
Yeah.
decide. And but once I'm into something, I'm into something, and I'll probably carry it through. And so I'll probably wait, and I'll probably watch one with dinner tonight. I just tend to watch TV on my meal break, so I'll probably watch one with dinner tonight, and then continue on the rest of the week. I'll finish it this week, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
But no, I find that this was definitely the strongest season out of the 3.
really
Uh,
interesting.
I do, yeah, I definitely it's in terms of stakes and character development, I definitely found it to be the most, um, structurally sound in terms of storytelling, um, because everything seems a lot more dire, in some parts of this season because 'cause we're kinda coming to, like, the climax of the story, right? Um, but, I mean, my only grievance really with the show is just some dialogue. Some of the dialogue writing is really weird, and I don't know if it's just me being ex exceptionally picky or, if it's just the writing. I honestly can't tell. I find that my biggest issue is with Ezrin. Like, Ezrin sometimes just has, like, these random one-liners that just feel really out of place sometimes, and they don't really feel like they serve anything, and it's usually when he's talking to animals. Very cute. I love Ezrin a lot, but I just find sometimes just the pacing of things just get really choppy when he just has his one little aside. It's like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, this kid can talk to animals. Did you forget?" That's kinda what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple of tonal issues at some points throughout where they're in the middle of a pretty serious situation. They've been working up this whole thing to be like, "This is a big deal. It's a really big, serious deal," and then someone will make a kind of joke about it for, like, a one-liner, and then it's back to being super serious again, and it's just like, I know you're trying to break the tension, but it just
Hmm.
feels out of place in some points.
I noticed
Um,
that in the second episode. It was like a slap in the face.
yeah.
It was tonally just the exact opposite of what we were dealing with, and it
Mhm.
made no sense for that cut to the other characters to work. Like
Yeah.
you could remove it and changes nothing.
Yeah.
And so, for example, and I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, but there's some heavy royal decisions that have to be made, and you're dealing with Ezrin as a kid trying to weigh what to do next. So he's not used to these kind of decisions making. So it's not
Yeah.
it's a there are some brief moments of levity, but it's only out of his own personal frustration where he's like tickling the what's bait, the little lizard
Mhm.
dog thing that he's got.
Yeah.
Um, so he scratches Bait's tummy and says like, "Oh yeah, you'd make a good king, wouldn't you?" And so it's that's funny and appropriate, right? Because he's just kind of like, he's exhausted, and then it cuts to Ezrin is the kid. What's his older brother's name?
Callum,
Callum. Callum and
Rayla.
Rayla are traveling through a field, and there's a bunch of little cute critters around, and it
Yeah.
affects nothing.
Yeah.
There's no story points. There's nothing, and they banter around. They do some stupid cute cartoony stuff, which is fine. Those are the kind of things where I think, all right, well, these are aimed at the younger kids. Like
Mhm.
this is to keep the 10-year-olds and the 8-year-olds maybe watching the show, but it it was a fun scene in the wrong place.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that should have been you should have summed up everything in how Ezrin was going to handle the situation and then cut back to Callum and Rayla doing their thing. And that's fine.
Mhm. Yeah.
But the problem with that I found is that as you mentioned, the dialogue in and again, I'm only talking about the first couple episodes, so I can't speak to the arc and the character development in the whole series, which I have enjoyed. Season 1 and 2, I'm still watching the show because overall I enjoy the series.
Yes, me too.
I find that there's some episodes or sometimes moments in episodes where I'm just like, oh, wow, you lost me there. Like, if this show wasn't so imaginative and overall a good show, I would be bailing at this point. Like,
Mhm.
if I didn't
Yeah.
like this, if I was on the fence about this would be pushing me out the door. And
Yeah.
as you said, it's the one liners from Callum or it's the one liners from Rayla, which are not meant to be funny, but it's just like she's now is the point in the plot where they have to move on. The quest must continue. So she literally stands there with her hands on her hips and says, the quest must continue. And he's like, I know. You've been walking for 3 seasons. I know that you're going to keep going. Why do you keep telling me this every 15 minutes? Like
Yeah,
it's
it can get a little bit repetitive at times.
yeah, and I it's very obvious. It's and like you said, it's weak dialogue. It's like they've just said what you've just watched. Like the dragon the first episode there's a dragon. I mean, it's not a big thing. I think they revealed at the end of the last episode last
They
season.
did. They did.
And
I
this
went
was the
back and
other
I
this
watched
is
like
the other
last
problem.
couple
Yeah,
episodes.
this is the problem. I didn't go back and watch the end of the last season. I should have. Um but there's a dragon in the first episode. And there's a point where the dragon breathes fire and then she then explains that there's a couple of minutes before he can breathe fire again because it's on a cooldown or something. Like she basically explains the mechanic of a video game, and it
Mm.
was so on the nose. It's like you didn't even try to hide the fact that this is essentially a boss fight. And you have to figure out that the fire breath has a recharge, and while it's recharging you can kind of run around safely. Like it really felt super obvious to me. And again, I try to remind myself that this is not aimed at adults, it's aimed at kids. But I was hoping that the show was going to grow from season to season as the kids were hopefully getting older. I guess the problem is
Mhm.
that all of these seasons are being released within a year and a half of each other. So the kids that started the show when they were 10 are still 10. Like that's, they're maybe 11.
Yeah.
They're not in some seasons of television cartoons. You'll start off with kids being like, 10 to 12, but then they're 13 and then they're 14. And the shows like Clone Wars is a really
Grow
good
with them.
example. They grow up
Yeah.
with them so that the entertainment becomes less kiddie and more adventure
Yeah.
focused.
Avatar is a really prime example of
Yes.
that. That is still I think I've mentioned it every other episode. That is still, like, what I base every single animated show off of, and I shouldn't
Yeah.
do that but that was just pinnacle storytelling and pinnacle character development and everything. But I will say, like, in terms of how character development happened in this season, definitely the strongest
Cool.
like, I don't wanna spoil anything for you, I don't wanna spoil anything for viewers, but there are some characters who go through a really intense make some really hard choices, and, um I'm very proud of them, and other characters who don't make those difficult choices, and it's kinda like, "Ugh, but you're smarter than this." But
Mm.
it's all very I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's I don't know, I found I was more interested in this season, like, before I kinda had to, like, "Alright, let's put on another episode," I had to, like, kind of get myself going into it. This one, I was like, "I'm just gonna keep watching it." I just
Mm.
found I couldn't stop watching it. Um,
Oh, it's
which to
it's
me
a
is a weird
visually
sign.
appealing show. Like
Oh, it's beautiful.
it's
But
an easy watch.
yeah, it's an easy watch, but I mean, like, in terms of, storytelling and character development, I've found that I couldn't stop watching, whereas before, I
Ah.
could stop watching. I'd be like, "Okay," I'm like, That's enough for today, I'll come to the next one later." I ended up staying up until, like, 2 or 3 in the morning one
Oh,
night and just
wow.
in bed, just, like, watching it and be like, "Oh, I should probably go to sleep." And then you know?
Yeah. And that's the
So
danger
that
when
to
they're
me,
only
that's a
like
good thing.
30 minutes, right? When they're a half an
Yeah,
hour or less, like it's
exactly.
less, it's harder to do that with an hour long drama that demands, like your attention for a full hour, where these are only 25 to 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're talking
exactly.
about maybe Soren and Claudia, because I'm already kind of getting hints of some major obstacles and character development from them in the first two episodes. And it's funny that you mentioned like that grip to kind of keep watching, because I think that's probably one of the reasons why I pushed ahead this morning to look to see how many episodes there were, because I did have that I'll just watch one more kind of drive. And I was just like,
Mhm.
well, there's obviously something about the show. I think it might be Ezrin and how he handles being a king, and how
Yeah.
the things that to me were obvious in episode 2 in terms of how the adults were trying to get him to do what they wanted, and the results of that um surprised me. Like, I'm glad that I well, wasn't so much surprised as I was relieved that they went the route that they should, given what we know about
Mhm.
Ezrin, as opposed to a route that would be kind of stereotypical. Like, it would be just
Yeah.
like every other cartoon I grew up with if they went one way and they didn't. They went another way, which I think is great. And that's where the show gets a lot of points for me.
Mhm.
Um, I do find that, as you mentioned, some of the voice acting and dialogue can be a little bit on the nose, where you just like, you obviously know, rather than having some sort of like mysterious double cross, you kind of like get right away, oh, don't trust that person. Because, like, the art direct, or the direction has been like, you're a villain, please talk like one. You know? And so there's no villain
Yeah.
shroud. Like, it's just like the moment someone opens their mouth and you're just like, wow, okay, that person obviously doesn't mean well. you know
There was one character I was actually pretty surprised about. I mean, it's just I don't even know if they have a there's just like one throwaway character. Well, I shouldn't say throwaway because he shows up and he's got like a line or two in every other episode. Um, and at first glance, I didn't realize that he was he was on the bad side at all.
okay,
So I'm interested to know if you can point out who I'm talking about. But yeah, definitely
cool.
in terms of storytelling, I found um storytelling and character development this season outshone, I think, everything else, because I think it's coming to a head now, but it's also pushed things. Uh, there are potentials for more seasons after this, and it's pushed things into a much darker area in some aspects.
Mm.
Um, again, like the only gripe I have with the show is occasional dialogue. There was one liner though that actually had me rolling. I had to stop and laugh for, like, a good 5 minutes because it was just so unexpected, especially from the character it came from. Top notch, super great. Um, you're y I hope you'll know what it is. It's, like, I think the second last episode or the last episode, I can't remember which one, but it's towards the end. So good. Um, but it was overall, really liked it. I'm very excited for the next season now, whereas before, like, after the first season, like, "Yeah, I'll watch that, I'll keep watching it," and second season is like, "Yeah, we'll see what's going on," and then now the end of this one, I'm just like, "Oh, I can't wait for next season." Um, so it's got me really amped for the story as a whole, and then, of course, it looks stunning. The really clear design of each of the elf races has been fantastic. Um just the clear, like, design of every single country and people and character, like, they all have very, very clear,
Yes.
defined designs, and
Yeah.
the character, models are amazing.
The culture is there. For me,
Yes,
it's
yes,
it's it's
yes,
it's
thank
to me,
you.
it's the costuming and the symbols and stuff like that. Like, you see somebody walk in, and from their colors, symbols, signets, stuff like that, even though it's a made up country or realm that they're from, you kind of figure this is probably either Middle Eastern or desert or something, just because
Mhm.
everybody
Yeah,
kind of feels that way. What I like so much about the show, and this has been true of all the seasons, not just season 3 that I've watched so far, is that when people walk in, it's not how they look that leads you to assume where they're from, because people can be white, black, Hispanic, somewheres in the middle. They can
yeah,
be men, women in different power positions. It really doesn't matter. They could be also heterosexual or not, and there's no announcement of that. There's it's just how it is, which I really
Yeah.
just like how they present
Yeah.
all of that as a baseline normal, but how they're dressed and how they act is where you're like, oh, they're obviously a warrior race, and
Mhm.
deal with strife all the time, or vice versa. These people are in like flowing robes and speak very softly, so they're probably a peaceful, more intellectual, culture. And so they
Yeah.
and they handle all that with like color and texture and
Mhm.
posture, presentation, that kind of thing. But it doesn't affect it. It's not the person underneath; it's how it's all dressed, which I really
Mhm.
like.
Yeah.
Um, I the thing that I'm concerned about is less to do with the Dragon Prince on its own as it is with other shows that Netflix does animation wise. You're dealing with 9 episodes. They're only a half an hour long. It should not take 3 episodes out of your 9 episode series to get going,
Yes, I
right?
agree.
My impressions last night after watching the first episode were very different than watching the second. The first, I was just like, this is formulaic. Like I could almost say the lines before they were said. I could predict what they were going to do next to complete the obstacle. Like
Mhm.
it was wholly predictable. Which is not what you want from a show like this that's so inventive in every other way.
Yeah.
And I was concerned. Now I'm less concerned now that I've watched the second episode, but even then there was some stuff where like, well, now I'm past the predictable, and now we're just doing this useless kiddie stuff that I can now just assume that whenever we're watching Callum and Rayla in this particular episode, it's going to be fluff. It's useless and
Mm.
and overdone. It's like, how many jokes about flowers were there? Like 7. It's find something else. Like, sure, make a joke about a flower. It's funny, but then move on. It
Yeah.
I find that that kind of stuff really grates on me. And I think it might
Yeah.
be because you and I are picky, but it reminds me always of what I say about what happened to the CW shows and why I just can't get back into them, is that they're aimed at and uh and they are dumbed down for an audience that I think probably can appreciate and understand more. And it's
Yeah.
too bad. Because in CW shows where they announce that they have to fight the villain and win, like every time that you come back from a commercial break, you're just like, well, yes, you're the hero.
We
I'm kind of
know.
assuming that's what you're going to do. There's a murderous lightning bad guy that's out there. Chances are you're going to spend this episode trying to catch them. I kind of got that far. This is season 7. Like I'm there,
Mhm.
And I feel like that's the kind of thing that they do in these cartoons, is that for whatever reason they feel like they have to maintain these old models of like, we have to make sure that new people coming to this catch on and are hooked and understand that we have to present everything this show has to offer in the first 30-minute episodes. Like, no, you don't. This is season 3. If people want to learn about the show, they can go back and watch season 1. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
there. It's all streaming. So
I had this conversation with someone at work, and they were just like, "Oh, you gotta watch, like, the first couple of episodes of something." I'm like, "I shouldn't have to.
no.
I shouldn't have to." A show if a show is gonna be successful, it's going to capture you in the first episode. It
And
shouldn't take all this time to build up. Now, like, your first you run the risk of, like, having things get very, like, rushed. I know, like, in the case of Supergirl, when I went back and I watched the first episode, I was like, "Alright, this gets a lot done in one episode," which is great, but it's also a pilot episode, so they weren't
yes.
sure how it was gonna be received, and then it kind of slowed itself down after that, so that's forgivable. But in a show that maybe already had a pilot, like, Netflix is different. Like, a pilot thing that's gonna be, you know, put on TV, that's kind of its own thing, but the idea with Netflix is you have a full season together before Netflix even approves it and puts
Mhm.
it on its platform. So you have to have a well-structured story, and if your story does not, you know, develop the inciting incident, like thinking back on The Dragon Prince, I didn't know what the plot of the story was until probably halfway through the first season, which I think is a bit of a problem.
Mhm.
I think that saving grace is the fact that it's very visionary. Like, it looks incredible.
Yes.
And the design of the characters is so engaging, and it's so different from what we've seen before. Um and how each race has like a really I mean, well, especially with the Moonshadow Elves, like, it's really unusual in terms of high fantasy aspects to have elves with Scottish accents. They're usually very high profile British accents. So this is a different thing. It's something unique. And, they have horns and they have only four fingers when usually they're like tall, ethereal looking creatures. So this is very different and unique. And that I think is the only reason why I kept watching it. But I didn't know the plot. Like, we didn't know about the egg until probably halfway through. And that's, like, that's 5 episodes in. That's a long time to go without knowing what the story is. Um, so I definitely think that shows should focus on getting, like, their inciting incident across within the first episode because then okay, here's what we're in for right away.
Mm.
Um, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making sense. I feel like I'm just rambling.
No, yeah, I understand it. It's for me. It's the I draw the same conclusions. It's that this
Mhm,
is season three, and forgive me if I'm remembering incorrectly because it was fairly late last night. We got a prologue at the beginning of season three where they went back in time to do a little
mhm.
bit of character development and show us some cool stuff.
Yeah,
And I thought
that
that
was
was
cool.
that was very cool. And then in the beginning of season of episode two, we got a last time on the Dragon Prince, and then they recapped a bunch of stuff from season two.
Mm.
I could have used that at the beginning of episode one.
I agree, and I went through and I was watching some of it, I'm like, "Did I miss something?" And I went
Me too.
back and I watched the last episode again of season 2 and then kept going. I was like, "Okay, now I see where we're at." That was a weird choice.
Yeah. I I remember last season you and I talking about it and really liking the last season. But forgive me if I'm remembering incorrectly. I don't think I liked the last episode of the last season.
Um,
I don't remember whether it was just too much of a tight little bow or it was just too like on the nose, like too much crammed into one episode. Like they kind of wrapped everything up really fast when they took all season to get to episode like final the season finale. Or maybe it's
yeah.
season one that I'm remembering the finale of. Like one of the finales in seasons one or two, and seasons one and two happened like within 3 or 4 months of each other. Like it was very quick.
Mhm.
And so I do remember one of those finales being like, wow, this was very, not necessarily lackluster. It was just, everything was just very, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And I remember not being very satisfied by that.
I feel
Uh,
like that was what my problem with season 2 was
yeah,
that it was very like, "And then this happened, and then this
yeah.
happened, and then this," like, season 1 was definitely a little bit more dynamic in the sense of like, "Hey, we're just getting started." Season 2 just felt season 2 felt a bit more formulaic,
Hmm.
personally, and I still liked it, obviously, but, like, I wasn't as jazzed about season 3 until I finished season 3,
Yeah. Well, this
after
and
season
and this is
2.
the third time that you and I talked about it because we started on the Citadel Cafe episode 288,
Mhm.
and then we also talked about it on 306, which was
Yeah.
from February of this year, and it was only in September of 2018. So September, February, and then we had to wait from February all the way around till November to get
Yeah.
season three. So for those of you that are wondering, you can always go back to 288 and 306 and listen to the conversations about the Dragon Prince that we had at first. I'm wondering, it's been like almost a year since we started talking about it, or no, past a year since we first started watching it. I wonder if we're just like repeating ourselves or if we're
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go
or if
back
our
and listen.
conversations or if we're like developing the conversation with the show because I do so many podcasts and when you do things weekly for over a
Mm,
year, like remembering what I said about this show in 288, I do remember. I know I've mentioned the fact that the jokes are kind of a little bit too often and too kiddie for me sometimes, but then there are the
yeah.
other things that I like about it, like what you mentioned about like the elves and the culture and all that kind of stuff that really kind of takes over. I also I find, and this is a weird comment that I picked up from a friend of mine, Garrett Weinzierl, on another podcast, and I was looking for it specifically, and I feel like I might have missed something in the first couple of seasons because he had mentioned that it was an ugly show and he hated the backgrounds. I'm just like, Really?
I
Are we
really?
watching the same show?" And I now again, I have not gone back and looked at season 1 and 2. I don't remember being blown away, but I remember them being good enough and painterly. And but in hearing that comment, and I have no idea whether Garrett listens to the Citadel Cafe anymore, but in hearing that comment, I was specifically looking at the backgrounds in the first couple episodes of season three. I was like, I think we're watching different shows. Now, the character animation I still have the same issues with, I do, but it's cell shaded 3D animation. It's only going to be as good as it can be.
Mm.
And there's a budget for
See,
that. Like,
I still like it. I like
oh,
that style. I think it's a very
it's fine. Like it
it's
looks
very
they're doing
stylized.
a very good job for how they're executing it. This
Mhm.
style of animation is getting better and better every time a show does it. And I
Yeah.
think the Dragon Prince is achieving that. Especially on some of the younger characters. Like I find that Ezran, you really don't think about him so much as a CG model very much. He's just got such expressive eyes and the way that he's got his hair, and because of
Yeah.
everything being so stylized and they're not trying to make it really realistic, it works out quite well.
Mhm.
Um, I notice it less on the bigger action sequences because again they do some really cool stuff with like blurs and traditional techniques that make it look less CG. The stuff that I find really a telegraph are I feel like it's well, I think it's because the female faces are so subtle. There's not big strong jaw lines, there's no beards, there's no mustaches, there's nothing like that to kind of give a lot of definition to the face. So
Yeah.
I find that with um we'll say daintier characters like Claudia in terms of her facial features, not her personality, but um, depending on what,
Yeah, she's got a very loud personality.
yeah, depending on which angle she's looking at, her nose just disappears, right? As
You know what?
part of
I
the
was
style.
noticing that more so this season than I think I noticed in other seasons.
Yeah,
Um, but, like, I didn't think it was a bad thing. I was just like, "Why does everyone have
it,
really flat
it's a
noses?"
little
Like,
yeah,
I think that
and
was, like,
I
my one
think
random
and
thing.
some of that is like the callback to the anime that inspired it, right? Like, I mean, anime traditionally when they look straight on, there's no nose. It's just a little line. It meant to be like the
Yeah.
shadow underneath it, but the ridge of the nose is usually not drawn, nor are the nostrils. It's usually just like a little line for a heroic kind of like good looking character. If it's an old
Mhm.
gnarly old woman or man, they draw everything like it's just wrinkles and nostrils and nose hair and like just, it's like they always have all those details. But it's one of those things that I find is just a weakness of the style, but it's a thing that I can forgive in the fact that we'd be waiting years to get the Dragon Prince if it was animated just like Avatar. I wish it was, but we would it would
Yeah.
take so long.
So
And
long.
I think that in order to produce it at the pace that they want and to achieve some of the things that they want, then I think that they have to use it. They have to go in this direction. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed. Uh, I can't remember her name. She's the deaf aunt, the
Amaya.
Amaya. Any time that
Yeah.
she's on, I really enjoy her presence and stuff. And
Yeah.
she had some of the heavier action sequences, and within the two episodes that I've watched, and in those action sequences, I forget that I'm watching CG stuff because
Yes.
she's an
Yeah.
engaging character.
Yeah.
It's heavy on the action, good posing. Like there's all these different things. The environment that she's in is very dramatic. So like all of that just melts away, pardon the pun. And it really just you just start watching the show and what's going on. You stop looking at it. It's only in the subtle like talky head moments when people are moving around, depending on how it's animated, that it sort of like rears its ugly head. But
Mhm.
I'm really enjoying the inventiveness so far as well in terms of the because Rayla and Callum, where they're going, things are getting more magical as they go,
Yes.
and so it becomes less just a little bit of a twist on like biology and what we know is like animals and you know the world, and now it's like a full on topsy turvy. It's almost like what was the planet in Avatar? Um,
Oh, Pandora.
Pandora. It's almost like Pandora, where there's this like undertone of like deep sea bioluminescence. There's
Mhm.
lots of different colors. Things that are normally green or not, they're pink. Like, stuff like that just makes it feel ethereal and
Yeah.
very fantasy and fun. And so I'm looking forward to those designs and seeing where they take it there. But yeah, I've been watching, keeping a close eye on the backgrounds, Garrett. And I don't know what you're talking about. like
I don't know. I think the whole thing I can't that's the one thing that I thought drew me in the most was that it's a beautiful looking show. I wouldn't say
Mhm.
that it's ugly at all. Now if you don't like that cell shaded
Oh yeah.
cell shaded 3D CGI kind of style, which I really do enjoy.
Yeah.
I could understand why people wouldn't like it, but I mean, I also
Yeah.
spent a lot of years watching Rooster Teeth Ruby, which is all the same sort
Yeah.
of style, so it's using the same sort of engine.
I would really be on the fence if the backgrounds were also CG, but
Mhm.
it's only props. Like it's only like a wagon or something that a character has to interact with that's CG. Everything else is just a painted background. And I find that
But
they
it's a very highly detailed painted
Oh
background.
yeah, no, they're beautiful. It
They're
reminds
very
me it reminds me of like the Studio Ghibli stuff in a way.
yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. You can see more about the episode at thecitadelcafe.com. We'll have links to all the different things that we talked about this week. You can thank Kevin McLeod because he composed the music. You can email the show at thecitadelcafe@gmail.com and let us know what you think about The Dragon Prince. Keep the spoilers on the down low until I've seen the rest, if you don't mind. Or at least let me know that the email is going to have some spoilers and we'll address it when I've seen the rest of the season. You can find us by name on Twitter and Facebook, and you can subscribe on iTunes, Android, Stitcher, and Spotify. Word of mouth is, of course, the best way to spread the show around, though. It's free. Just tell a friend, poke a friend in the arm, and say, hey, this is fun. You should listen to it. And hopefully they do. You can also subscribe on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, if you'd like to help us make more podcasts, you can go to patreon.com/The Citadel Cafe. Joining at any level will give you an invite to the members only Discord. There are multiple levels with different rewards like Discord roles and bonus episodes. I'm looking at connecting with Lou. We're going to talk about some more Mandalorian stuff, and maybe we'll offer those up as some bonus episodes for our patrons. My name is Joel Duggan. You can find everything I am doing online, including my illustration and design portfolio at joelduggan.com. If you're interested in hiring me, then just drop me a line. Filling up pretty quick for December, so you might be looking at 2020, but always happy to talk about new projects, so reach out anytime you want. You can check out my other podcast, all about Minecraft, at thespawnchunks.com. And of course, follow me on social media with just my name, Joel Duggan. I'm very easy to find. I'm going to point you towards Twitch, where we are sailing into the stars in No Man's Sky more often than not. But I play Minecraft on weekends, so find more there. Megan, where can people find you and all the things that you're doing online?
People can find me online on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now Twitch at Megan Townsend. And if you want to follow my personal project, which I'm still working on slowly, The Era of Keldanan, that could be Instagram as well.
You've been listening to the Citadel Cafe, where we are fast, easy, and cheap, but you can only pick two.